Hello everyone! In today's video, I will be talking about a very interesting topic. It is about nuclear safety in conflict zone, especially in the case of Zaporizhzhia. But before starting with the substance, let me introduce myself. My name is Thirza Christy and I'm a batch 2022 law student of Airlangga University. In today's video, I will cover the case overview, and I will examine it from the perspective of international humanitarian law and also nuclear safety. I will also share some policy recommendations, and I will close this video with interview featuring with my non-nuclear law students friends. Now, let's get started. The protection of nuclear plants is critically endangered during war, as seen when Russian forces occupied Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in 4 of March 2022. Although its 6 reactors are in cold shutdown, they remain fueled with uranium and rely on unstable external power to keep cooling system running that has been repeatedly cut in the conflict. The IAEA reported serious safety threats including drone attacks, fire, and blackouts, risking radiation leaks that endanger civilians protected under the international humanitarian law. Controlling a plant like ZNPP, the largest in Europe, can become a tool, challenge, and bargaining chip in a war. The threats to ZNPP safety also raise serious concerns for civilian protection, as civilians are entitled to protection under the IHL during an armed conflict. Immediate demilitarization and policy blending humanitarian care with nuclear safety are urgently needed to keep such sites out of conflict and prevent catastrophic damage. To begin with, I will start with Article 48 of the First Additional Protocol of the Geneva Convention. This article clearly states that attacks must be directed only at military objectives and not civilians or their property. So the key question is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant or ZNPP a military target? Based on my analysis, the ZNPP meets the all criteria to be considered a non-military object. This means it is fully protected from attacks under international law and should never be targeted in an armed conflict. Several core principles of IHL apply here, for example, distinction, proportionality, and precaution. The principle of distinction is vital because the NPP supplies energy not only to the military but also to civilians, and attacking it risks releasing dangerous radioactive materials. Proportionality comes into play since any damage to the NPP could lead to a catastrophic damage. And finally, the precaution principle requires parties to avoid unnecessary harm to civilians, their property, and also to the environment. Now, we will start with the first convention to be discussed under the IHL, which is the Fourth Geneva Convention. Actually, there is no clear prohibition to target nuclear installation in an armed conflict under this convention. However, only the stipulation is interpreted as a prohibition to do so. Moving on, now we'll discuss the first and second additional protocol of the Geneva Convention. As I previously mentioned, before the protocols, there was no explicit prohibition against attacking nuclear installations. Additional Protocol 1 addresses this gap, particularly through Article 56, which prohibits attack on works or installation containing dangerous forces, like nuclear electrical generating station. However, Article 56 paragraph 2 also includes an exception. These criteria, regular, significant, and direct support, must be all met cumulatively. For example, regular means consistent supply and not occasional, significant means real and impactful, and direct support requires a causal link to military operations. Although ZNPP supplies electricity to both civilian and possibly military operations, this doesn't justify removing its absolute protection. Moving on to the second criteria mentioned in paragraph 2, the only feasible way to terminate such support means attacking the plant must be the last resort. Since all 6 ZNPP reactors have been placed in a cold shutdown, meaning they cannot supply electricity to anyone, attacking ZNPP is not justified as alternative measures exist. Moreover, paragraph 5 mandates preventing the placement of military objectives near such facilities. Yet, reports confirm the presence of armed forces and military equipment at ZNPP, indicating that its militarization by Russia is a violation of IHL. Additionally, under IHL's definition, attack includes any use of armed force. Therefore, Russian action of shilling and drone attacks to the NPP may constitute as a violation of IHL. Additionally, under IHL, attack is defined as any use of armed forces. Therefore, Russian action of shelling and drone attacks to the NPP may constitute as a violation of IHL. And lastly, if we see from Article 15 of the Second Additional Protocol of the Geneva Convention, this article is a repetition of Article 56 of the First Additional Protocol, but only without any exception. The IHL primarily governs the protection of nuclear installations during armed conflict, yet existing nuclear safety laws doesn't specifically address these situations. The Convention on Nuclear Safety, or CNS, offers the main legal framework, assigning safety responsibility to the license holder. However, in cases like the NPP occupation, Ukraine lacks control, and Russia, an IAEA member, has failed to meet its safety obligation. Other relevant treaties also omit armed conflict consideration. Notably, the CPPNM excludes military activities, deferring such matter to international humanitarian law. This legal gap leaves nuclear safety during conflicts inadequately addressed, underscoring the urgent need for clear international policies designed specifically to protect nuclear facilities in times of war. Therefore, responding to the ZNPP case, the IAEA issued 7 indispensable pillars, and however, all of the 7 pillars were alleged to be breached. Although international guidance on protecting nuclear facilities is limited, some agreements offer good examples. For example, the 1988 India-Pakistan Agreement and the African Treaty of Palindaba, or also known as the Treaty of Palindaba. The India-Pakistan Agreement, expanding on Geneva Protocols, prohibiting any direct or indirect attack on nuclear installations, and is covering a broad range of nuclear facilities beyond just nuclear generating power stations as mentioned in the additional protocol. Similarly, Article 11 of the Palindaba Treaty bans armed attacks on nuclear sites within the African Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone. These agreements demonstrate how nuclear facilities that pose risks to civilians and to the environment should be fully protected regardless of their military status. My first policy recommendation is to give a broader definition of nuclear installation. Current laws mainly protect nuclear energy generating stations, leaving out other essential facilities like research reactors or uranium enrichment sites, which can also pose grave risk if damaged. Taking inspiration from the India-Pakistan Agreement, I propose that the international community adopt a definition encompassing all nuclear power, research reactors, and other definitions mentioned above. Secondly, all nuclear installations shall not be a military objective. All nuclear installations must be absolutely protected from being targeted in conflicts. No attacks should be allowed on these facilities or their surrounding, even if they are considered as military objective. This is crucial to prevent harm to civilians, their property, and to the environment from the release of dangerous forces. The protection must be absolute and comprehensive, covering even nearby military targets that could endanger the installation. Third, all parties shall respect international humanitarian law and nuclear safety principles to protect fundamental human rights. This means applying existing laws without gaps or uncertainty, ensuring no contradictions arise when protecting nuclear installations. Respecting these legal frameworks strengthens global nuclear safety efforts in an armed conflict. The next suggestion is all military operations must cease at the ZNPP and its vicinity, allowing space for the safe and uninterrupted operation while also ensuring its security from military interference is crucial to prevent a nuclear catastrophe. This recommendation aims to prevent any party from conducting any military activity that may pose a significant threat to the installation. This recommendation includes all parties to the conflict shall agree to immediately cease all military operations, including offensive, defensive, within the nuclear installation site and its immediate vicinity. Moving on to the fifth recommendation, is to establish a bilateral treaty to create demilitarized zones around nuclear installations. As mentioned in Article 60 of the First Additional Protocol and also Rule 36 of the Rules of International Humanitarian Law, attacking demilitarized zones is strictly prohibited under the IHO. These zones are vital to physically separate military activities from nuclear sites, reducing the risk of harm and promoting mutual accountability. The next recommendation is in the case of nuclear installation occupation, there shall be a shift of responsibility to the occupying party. In this present case, Ukraine no longer has full control over the ZNPP, which may result in ambiguity in performing its obligation to protect the ZNPP. Therefore, to ensure the maximum protection of nuclear installations, the occupying party shall have the responsibility to perform the obligations arising from international humanitarian law and nuclear safety. This recommendation aimed to protect the safety and security of nuclear installations even in an armed conflict situation. Therefore, my suggestion includes, in the event that a party occupies the nuclear installation of another party, which prevent the original operator from exercising control and responsibility for the safe operation of the installation, the responsibility shall automatically shift to the occupying party. The occupying party shall take all obligations to ensure the protection of the installation and maintain compliance with relevant international nuclear safety and humanitarian law standards. Last but not least, during occupation, all parties must refrain from action that could harm civilians, their properties, and also the environment around the nuclear facility. Both the occupying and the original parties share the duty to exercise the utmost caution to prevent catastrophic consequences, regardless of control over the area. This policy recommendation includes, in the case of nuclear installation occupation, both the parties shall refrain from any acts that may cause harm to civilians, their property, or the environment, ensuring the utmost protection at all times. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending today's interview. But before we start to the questions, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Nicholas Ray. You can call me Nico. I'm from Dentistry Faculty of Airlangga University.
From a health perspective, do you think nuclear is dangerous?
Yes, from a health perspective, nuclear materials can be very dangerous if the radiation is released. And even low-level radiation and also long-term exposure can increase the risk of cancer, genetic mutation, and also organ damage. And radioactive materials can contaminate air, soil, water, and food, and also entering the human body through inhalation and ingestion. And last, nuclear accident can cause the psychology things of human. It can cause stress, anxiety, and also trauma to human.
Hello, my name is Josiah. I am from environmental engineering.
Okay. From a non-law student perspective, do you think international cooperation is needed or mandatory in this case?
Yes, of course, international cooperation is necessary. No single country can handle a nuclear emergency alone. Countries need to work together through organizations like the EEA to monitor safety, share information, and respond quickly if an accident happens.
Do you think international humanitarian law has a strong correlation with nuclear safety in an armed conflict?
Yes, it does. International humanitarian law aims to protect civilians during war, and nuclear safety protects people from radiation. When nuclear site is attacked, both safety rules and EHL are broken, so they are closely connected.
Okay, thank you, Christy, for the opportunity that you have given me today. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ahmad Rufian Griawan. I'm majoring in International Relations Studies in University of Airlangga.
Do you think in an armed conflict, a party may attack or target a nuclear installation?
So I think it should be protected by any law in international law in the country's law to protect a nuclear installation.
Do you agree that damage to nuclear installation may pose a catastrophic risk to the civilians and also to the environment?
I will agree with that statement because, frankly, nuclear installations fail out or any damage, not just from a war, but also natural disaster like Fukushima or Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island plant. Uh, we have to assume that nuclear power plant, or not just nuclear power plant, nuclear installation, everything, nuclear waste disposal sites and everything, if there is anything that goes on with this nuclear installation, of course, the spill out, not just the spill out, but also the effects on the long run. Because frankly, on Chernobyl, the case on Chernobyl 1984 was that most of the effects were long run, like cancer and also strokes.
Okay, hello, my name is Inaya Kediza, and I'm from Faculty of Social and Political Science.
Do you think it is important to protect nuclear installations in an armed conflict, and why?
Okay, yeah, so I think my answer to the first question is very important because nuclear has a lot of effects, bad effects, negative effects to society's lives. And if we don't control the nuclear station in a good way, I think we're gonna face some problems.
Do you agree that damage to nuclear installation may pose a catastrophic risk to the civilian and also to the environment?
Of course, as I said before in the first answer, that nuclear has a very negative effects if we don't control the nuclear in a good way. So yeah, my answer to the second question is yes, of course.
Okay, hello. My name is Johannes Peranduran Warin. I'm a student at Universitas Airlangga, and I'm majoring in International Relations, class of 2022.
Do you think it is important to protect nuclear installations in the case of an armed conflict, and why?
Yes, actually, it is non-negotiable because these are the works and installations that containing dangerous forces. Even limited damage can cascade into radiological disease, and then some grid collapses, and then water and food contamination and mass displacement of people, and also cross-border fallout. It is a good opinion that you've given to me before.
I think it's very comprehensive and also it actually answers some of the gray lines that have been existed since back in the day. So
You already gave. Itu udah cukup memfasilitasi.
I totally agree.
The suggestions are good, but more can be added.
Alright, that was all of the interview clips, and at its core, everyone agreed with my policy recommendation, and they also share some valuable insights such as establishing a dedicated monitoring team, holding perpetrators accountable, and also creating a clear mechanism to share responsibility in an occupation of nuclear installation. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you find it insightful.